What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Tell Me More podcast presented by Major League Success. And I have a very good friend and someone that I got to really get to know over the last, 2 years now at this point.
Yeah.
Ryan Bowman with eXp Realty. Ryan, thanks so much for jumping on here and, just really sharing, your journey to this business and kind of where, you plan on taking your business into the future.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So Ryan, I always start with growing up. Um,
Okay.
from the very, very, very beginning. And as I always, talk to agents and get to understand their stories and how they got to this business, there's usually something that's happened, either earlier in their life or in a previous career that has a huge impact, on their business and how they thought about building their business. So, what was life like growing up for you?
It was interesting. So I went to 7 schools in 12 years. Wasn't a military family, although that's certainly where my heart is. Absolutely. Lived in Toronto for about 5.5 years as well. My dad just kind of moved around. He was in computers and he had opportunities. And he was somebody that when he saw an opportunity, he took it. Maybe that's where I get that from. But went to school, actually, born and raised in Pittsburgh. That's why I've got the sign over there. So I'm not a bandwagon jumper. I'm a homer. That's where I was born and raised. But so I grew up and actually out of high school, went to college and flunked out. Didn't have the maturity, didn't have the just maturity to handle the responsibility of where I was in my life. And so I took a job, excuse me, where my dad worked. He was the CFO. He was doing computers for this company. And I took a job working in a warehouse, pushing a broom, summer help kid. And it was a place where they sold building materials. And so ultimately what ended up happening is I ended up getting my CDL license, joining the union. And I spent and all told in a variety of different positions, 15 years there.
Wow.
I worked in the warehouse as the youngest guy there, ended up becoming second in charge when the operations manager would go on vacation. I filled in for him. Ended up getting my degree in business, organizational studies, and that company ended up becoming my customer. I literally went from a warehouse guy on Friday to the sales guy calling on the president and the vice president and head of one of the business units as my customers on Monday.
Yeah, we have to unpack this a little bit. 'Cause you just dove right in, and I love it. But we gotta start. We gotta go back to the 7 schools, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I went to three. I went to three different schools. And how did you do seven? Like three was hard for me.
Well,
Seven, like I think the people that haven't moved schools, they don't understand um, the toll that takes on kids. Having to always start over. Say bye to friends, meet new friends. So,
absolutely.
and then you threw in Toronto as if like, oh yeah, it's like, oh yeah, we just moved to Cleveland. It's not, a whole different country. so, so
Well, it
dive
was
into kind of
interesting.
that a little bit more.
Yeah, you're constantly having to make new friends. You're constantly having to adapt and learn new skills. Moving to Toronto was, it sounds like, oh, it's just Toronto, but it was a different culture. Kids talk different, kids dress different. And once I finally kind of got acclimated to that, and oh, by the way, in 5.5 years, I went to 3 schools up there. One was because we moved, and two was because they built a new school, and I was required to move. So a good portion of the kids were still kind of the same, but I was starting to get acclimated, starting to have a little bit of an accent from, fitting in a little better. And then I moved back, to the United States and had to start all over.
So were you someone then growing up that became a very good skill set for you was just being able to go and talk to new kids, meet new people, I was not that. I was the shy, kid and all those things. Sports is what really helped me break into those circles and those friendships. But were you just that outgoing person that was able to kind of build those relationships and connections?
I would say it's a little bit of both. I think at times, depending on where I was and how I felt. When I felt like the outsider, I would kind of be more of an introvert. I would kind of keep to myself. And then over time, as I made some connections, I would be more outgoing. I was probably a little guarded in some of those circumstances. But at the very least, I think it developed a tool and a skill that I, obviously have used, throughout my career in a variety of different positions over the years.
Yeah. Yeah. So you move around. You eventually come back to the states, and you end up going into college. You mentioned that at the time it just wasn't for you.
Mhm.
Did you go? I mean, was school something that you struggled with? Up until that point, did you not find it interesting, or was it just college? Was that like that freedom, and as college kids, we get to do whatever we want at that point, right?
Well, I grew up in a very strict conservative household, and school was actually too easy. I didn't study for finals much. I would crack a book for a few minutes the day before, and I ended up with I think I graduated with a 3.7. So it was too easy. I
Yeah.
got to college and I didn't have the discipline, one, to get out of bed, and two, that extra freedom that I just didn't have, growing up. And so, I have nobody to blame but myself. Probably taking a semester off and maybe, growing up a little bit probably would have helped. Um, but yeah, I mean, so that period was just it was just all about just not being able to handle the responsibility, and I kind of like took a left hand turn there.
Sure, sure. So once that happened, that's when you went and started working at the company that your dad was at?
Yeah, yeah, my dad
Okay,
basically said, if you're gonna quit school, you're gonna go to work. And so I did, and I took a few classes on the side, but just didn't click. It just wasn't the right timing for me.
sure.
I was at a place that it was a warehouse, and in order for you to be there full time, you had to get your CDL. At the time, I was 20, and I had to wait till I was 21 because they delivered to multiple states, and you couldn't get a CDL in all of those states till you were 21. But also in the meantime, the reason I think that I was in a position to also take over for the operations manager when he was out was there was a lot of specialized departments that our company had, and I made it a goal of myself to be able to do every one of their jobs. I knew that when I first started there that they didn't have to hire me on full time. They really didn't even need me. But I wanted to be so valuable to them that they would have found a spot for me, which they ended up doing. And so that was important to me. And I think that's where kind of my true work ethic and sense of responsibility and who I am kind of really started.
I'm curious, what made you think that coming out of a situation where you didn't really apply yourself to the college, like that's a switch, going from like
What?
college, man, I get to do whatever I want, to you know boom, like, okay, I'm here, and now mentally I want to make it so they can't fire me, essentially, right? Like,
Yeah.
to where I'm such a value add to this organization. What caused that switch for you?
I think there was a couple of things. One, I'm trying to think who gave me that advice. Somebody gave me that advice, and I wish I could remember who it was. I think it was a friend of mine that worked there. The other situation was I met somebody. I met my first wife, and she had a daughter that was a year and a half. And so I went from being this single guy, kind of out of control, to somebody that was in a committed relationship that ultimately, I got married. And so it was during kind of that transition phase, I mean, that, it was time to wake up and to grow up. And I grew up pretty quick, going from single guy to, stepdad and
Yeah.
husband.
Yeah. No, that's awesome because I think sometimes, you need almost that wake up call, right? Like, okay, it's stop
Absolutely.
playing around.
Yeah.
You're 20, 21, whatever it was. It's it's time
Yeah.
to get your stuff together.
Yeah. Yeah.
So lead me up to, you said you mentioned you were there for 15 years and kind of did multiple things. Kind of lead me up to that path of making that switch to the sales side.
Well, I actually got injured. So I was driving a truck. I was delivering material in kind of a remote location in Indiana, Pennsylvania, which, if you don't know where that's at, it's about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes outside of Pittsburgh. IUP is known because it's a party school. But I was delivering at a lumber yard there, and it was in January 1995. I was unloading material. And so we had some paneling on a forklift, and the gentleman from the lumberyard and I were signing off on the delivery tickets, making sure we had everything. And there was a guy that came in a 3/4 ton Dodge, thought he was going to make a left-hand turn on the snow and ice. Instead, he locked up his wheels. He hit me on my right side. My left side, my left leg was up against that paneling, and my femur snapped that direction to the left, broke my femur. And so ended up having 2 surgeries. It was about a 2-year recovery. All total, I was off work for 7 months. And then
Wow.
it just didn't get better. And I knew that, and this was back in the 90s, like I said. So, basically you just ask your doctor for painkillers and they give them to you. So I was on Vicodin for about 2.5, 3 years. Mainly in the winter time. Think about it. You're in a warehouse, concrete floor. That cold would just radiate up my legs, and it would just ache. And I worked anywhere from 10 to 14 hours a day on that concrete. And it was just, I knew that I couldn't do this another 40 years. I
Yeah.
knew that I had to do something different. So I went back to school at night. Little different work ethic, little different result. I ended up, with having 1B in the entire 5 years that I went back to school, and graduated summa cum laude, and was actually hired by a company that we sold their materials. They needed a sales rep. It was somebody that I knew, and I threw my hat in the ring and interviewed for it. And when they hired me, I literally went from being in their warehouse on Friday to going up and saying goodbye to everybody and coming back on Monday, and they were my customer. And so I was in that sales side for about 5 years, and they were my customer along with some other companies as well. I covered about 5, all are part of 5 states.
Wow. Wow. So then, did you go from that spot to then real estate? Was that the next
Not
transition, or was there something in between?
Not 100%. I ended up having an opportunity, and I took another sales position. It was with a customer that it was with another one of my customers. It seemed like the right opportunity. I was going to be building a business for them. It was a larger territory. The opportunity was there, and but I would be traveling a lot. I basically would have a Monday morning sales meeting, and then I would travel my territory developing this business the rest of the week. So I was gone Monday through Friday. At
Wow.
this point, I was already separated from my wife. We were already in the process of getting a divorce, and it was just one of those times where, for lots of reasons, that was the right opportunity. It's also around the time that I met Jacqui. And so I was doing this job, and I still lived in Pittsburgh at the time, and got just to hate the job. It was too much travel, but also the owner and the sales manager that I reported to, we just weren't in alignment of what needed to be done. They didn't have experience with distribution. I had lots of experience with distribution from a sales side, from an operation side. And it just over time, we just weren't in alignment.
Yeah.
At the same time, Jacqui actually ended up taking a team leader position at Keller Williams. She managed the Strongsville, Ohio location. And if you know anything about their model, when you're a team leader, they don't allow you to sell. They pay you a wage that allows you to be able to coach and to train and to recruit and things, but they don't sell. And she knew that it wasn't going to be a forever position. It's not that she didn't like the company. It's just typically that position, those folks last 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
And she knew that she wanted to come back to a real estate business, but she also just didn't want to walk away from her sales because she was a top agent in the area. I hated my job. I was already in sales. So I literally quit my job. I went to school on the weekend, quit my job, studied for a week or so, took the exam and passed it and took over her business as she was transitioning into that team leader position, and away I went.
So you just jumped in full time.
Yeah. Yeah. And it scared the crap out of me.
Did you have any interest in real estate, or was it just that opportunity, with Jacqui as hey, sales is sales. If I can sell X, I can definitely do real estate. Or was there like some sort of like thing ahead of time that's like, okay, yeah, I'm a little bit interested in real estate and in this business?
It started out as I can sell this, I can sell that. But it was also about helping her. And at this point, we were already engaged and we knew that we had a life together that we were building. And I knew that it was going to be important for us together. I didn't know if it was going to be a forever thing or not. A few years later, I actually did take a pause from real estate and took a corporate job, and we can get to that a little bit later. But it was the right opportunity. And it was also something that I was really interested in, because once I got into real estate, especially those first few years, we had so much to talk about in addition to, everything else in our lives. I mean, it was just, we've always clicked from the moment that we met. It was just one more thing that it just gave us to talk about. And it was really kind of a unique experience to kind of go through. I'd never gone through that before, where you just had so much. And even to this day, if I have something that comes up, I've been doing this 12 years. I've been a broker for the last 6, but there's still things that I'll talk through with her just because, different perspective.
Yeah. And the fact that you just dove in with 2 feet, all in full time, did you have supporters, doubters? Did people think you were crazy? I mean, you're established in this other, this other business, other career, other industry. And now it's like, hey guys, I'm just going to go do real estate.
Yeah. Well, I'd gone from, a W-2 paycheck guy, even when I was in sales and I was doing well, and I worked for that company, and my old company, Bennett Supply, was my customer. The way that I was paid, like 90+% of it was salary and the rest was bonus. So my pay was pretty consistent. I knew every 2 weeks I was getting that paycheck. I had, health benefits and a company car and all that stuff, and just said, the heck with it. It was, it absolutely. But I also think it was kind of the same thing. I went from, even though it was a steady paycheck, working in the warehouse, you punch a clock, you paid by the hour, you go home and you don't think about anything. To on Monday, being an independent sales guy that has to create my own schedule, that has to make my own appointments, that has to create and grow this business that I'm assigned, create business plan, like all of these things, like that was a new territory as well. So I kind of already, done a career shift, a career change. So
yeah,
it was just a different type of career change. And I knew if I could do it back then, without much support, because I didn't have a whole lot of support doing that switch as I did, jumping into real estate.
Just getting to listen to your story. We've known each other for, like I said, almost 2 years now, and got to know you real well just from the masterminds and things like. But just listening to like going to 7 different schools and moving and growing up, like that probably played into you being able to make these types of decisions into your adult life where you were, I wouldn't say comfortable with uncertainty, but you probably were a little comfortable with uncertainty, right? Because you've had that, repetition of that, from moving schools to schools to schools, going to
Absolutely.
college, not finishing, and all those other things.
And it's interesting. I've never connected those two dots, like in all
Yeah,
of my years. But you make a really great point. I'm sure that was a part of the reason why, even though I had some risks, some apprehension about these new
sure.
opportunities, but I've done that before, and I knew that if I could do that, I could do that, I could do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that absolutely played into all of these different things that I've done over the years as far as shifting gears.
Yeah. It's the, well, we'll figure it out.
Yeah,
Right. So,
yeah.
um, so Ryan, what year did you end up getting your license?
2010,
Okay. 2010. Dive
bottom of the
into those
market.
first. Yeah, I mean, I got mine in 2011. So dive into those first couple years for you. I mean, you got in really to kind of help, Jacqui and take
Mhm.
on her, business and past clients in her sphere. But can you dive into, what those first couple years were like, especially coming out of, '09, 2010, '08?
Well, I think everybody had to learn new skill sets in that market. One of the things that Jacqui encouraged me to do was to go to every training that I could at the time. Um, I'm sure that you've heard of the bold training. It's 8 weeks
Yep.
long. It's really intensive. It gets you on the phones, all kinds of things. Jacqui made the recommendation, and I jumped on board. I signed up for that as a non-licensed agent. I actually got licensed in week 4 or 5, and so I just, I was a transplant as well. I'd only been in this area for a few months, so I just
Yeah.
started calling her people. I started calling the Chamber of Commerce. I just went down the list at the chamber and basically just said, "Hey, I'm looking for businesses that I can refer my clients to. Can I introduce myself? Can we have a conversation?" And I did some of those things. The other thing that I did that to create my own identity was I really started working with investors. And I know a lot of people did that then, but what my niche was especially out of town, out of state, and even I had international clients. And so helping them to purchase properties in Akron. Akron actually was in the top couple cities in the country back then for rental properties, for investment properties, because you could buy a property for 8, 10, $12,000 and turn around and rent it for $700 or $800 and not have to put
Yeah.
a whole lot of money into it. So my identity, I was trying to establish my own identity because, long term, I knew that she was going to come back and we were going to start selling together. And, two people selling out of the same database in the same sphere and just all of those things wasn't going to be sustainable. And because of what was happening in the market, I learned how to do creative financing. I did land contracts, like I said, international. And so I really was open to learning new things. And I think as we're seeing the market adjusting now, that's serving me well, learning and keeping an open mind to what's going on.
Yeah. How did you? I did investors too. Obviously, part of that was the time, but when I got into the business, Ryan, really my mentor, he had a REO foreclosure list that he was selling off
Mm-hmm.
for a bank. So, just naturally, you had the listing. Now go find the buyer client and you would attract
Yeah.
those investors. But how did you get to the point of the out of state investors? Was it marketing specifically that way? I mean, obviously Facebook and all that wasn't what it is today.
Craigslist.
Um, yeah,
I did
the
really
good old
well
days,
with
the good
Craigslist.
old days of Craigslist.
When you could post an ad with a link back to your website. Um, when that was going, I created several accounts. I would post constantly. So I had a buyer that contacted me as a result of one of my ads. from Switzerland. And I'm like, this guy has to be spam. This guy's from Switzerland. He's head of banking for this huge company. Um, you know, he's married to somebody named Natasha. He's got this square jaw. He looks like the part. And I Googled him 6 ways from Sunday. I ended up having some phone conversations, and he was legit. He ended up having, he had about 250 grand that he wanted to spend in Akron because of the amount of properties he could buy. And he already had a property manager here. And I ended up selling him a package of properties that I had, 4 properties. He bought all 4 properties for like 52 grand. He bought them on land contract to extend his money because that was my idea, so he could buy more properties. And ultimately ended up being a great client of mine. I had somebody in Las Vegas. I had somebody in California. I just went and took a look at his property because he's thinking about selling it. And it was just because once I had a little bits of success, I started creating things like flyers, like purchase the property for $18,000. Here's how much they put into it. Here's how much they're renting it for. Here's what their cash flow is. Just real simple. And I had lots of examples that I could show people.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I joke sometimes I miss those days.
Well, I like the fact that, on one hand, it's great being able to help somebody with their forever home and the emotions and the friendships and the connections that you make here. And I enjoy that part of it. There's a piece of me that also enjoys the non-emotional, the numbers either make sense or they don't, just going out, looking at property, sending it to the clients. Hey, do any of these make sense? Because I would just go preview the properties. I take pictures. I give you my opinion. And I'd send it out to 3 or 4 different investors. And oftentimes they would bite on it. I had a local person as well that I was doing that with. And it was kind of fun. Got to see a lot of inner city Akron. Got to know it pretty well. But, I think it really helped me to hone my craft, especially pricing. And that's something that right now is serving me well. As the market adjusts, pricing's always important. Probably 6 months ago, you could throw it up. If you missed by a little bit, you were fine.
Sure.
But now pricing is so important. And when you see more and more of these price decreases and homes sitting longer than they should be because they didn't price them right. I think that's the biggest skill that I think that I learned out of all of that.
And not only that, and I've had this conversations with a lot of agents, recently it's, you actually had to have conversation skills,
100%.
right? Of being able to really navigate those times, whether it's a listing, whether it's the buy side. And I always tell agents, like, you guys need to practice how you say it and the words you use matter now. They didn't necessarily matter 12 months ago, 24 months ago. Like, attracting a client 12 months, 24 months ago was easy because everyone wanted to sell and everyone wanted to buy because rates were so low. So like getting the people to come to you, that part was fairly easy.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's flipped. Now it's harder to get people to come to you, but it's easier to get those buyers into contract.
Yeah.
Right. Sellers, it's still easy to get listings sold. It's still technically a seller's market. But the pricing is a little bit more important now than what it was. But
absolutely,
attracting people to come to you, how you talk to someone in the work, like that's one of the things I took away from 2011, 2012, 2013, that I was, having those hard conversations back then and really figuring out the best way to get the deal done.
I mean, how many people did we talk to that couldn't sell? And they had that conversation. They wanted to sell, they couldn't. Or I remember making a couple cry. I can remember sitting at their dining room table. I was suggesting the price that I was suggesting meant that they had to borrow $22,000 to sell that house. But the reason that they couldn't get the money that they wanted for that home were all the reasons why they wanted to leave. And so it was a hard conversation to have. but walking them through that experience absolutely, helped you to understand and to better communicate. And you're right. I mean, there were so many of those conversations, and having those conversations now more so with sellers. I know what you just saw your neighbor sell for, but keep in mind, they sold it for this, but they listed it for this. That doesn't mean that you can list it for this and sell it for this. Like, that's not how this works. And so it's absolutely been helpful recently.
Ryan, lead me up to kind of current day real estate, from 2010, 2014. How has your business looked? Have you switched your focus within your business? Kind of lead me up to current day.
Well, just like my history, it shifted a couple of times. So in 2013, Jacqui had come back to the business. I think it was probably the beginning of 2013 when she did, just because that had run its cycle. That's a job that is rewarding. It's also a job that's highly stressful, and it was just time for her to come back selling. And so we're selling for together for like 6 months, and I had the opportunity to take a corporate position, and it was with the company that I worked for. That I worked in the warehouse, and then they became my customer. They were opening a new location, actually in Buffalo, New York, and I actually opened that location for them as a general manager because I knew their operations. I knew the sales organization side because the company that was giving them the opportunity in Buffalo was the same one that I became the sales rep for in 5 states, which also meant I knew the customers up in that area. And so I was the perfect fit. It was probably the most challenging thing that I've done. I was hired July 15th. We had to be up, open, and running August 15th. We didn't have a building. Our material was on order, and I was the first employee that was hired. And so in a matter
and you were in Ohio.
And I was living in Ohio. So what ended up happening was I ended up getting an apartment up there, and I would drive up on Sunday night or Monday morning, and I'd stay the week and then drive home. First couple of months I stayed up there throughout the week, and Jacqui came and visited me just because there was so much going on. I was helping putting material away. I was helping getting the computer system up, office furniture, just all that stuff. Like, the office wasn't built out. Like, we were working off plastic, like nothing. And hired all of the employees. One of the employees, we ended up moving their territory. So they already worked for the company. They gave up some of that territory and took on some of the Buffalo market. Set up truck routes, just all of those different things. And I did that for 2 years, commuting back and forth. And again, it got to the point where this ship's heading in the right direction, but it doesn't align with my goals. And the good news was they actually had a location in Macedonia, Ohio, which I knew of, only about 25 minutes from me. I knew that general manager really well. I knew he was going to be stepping back. And so I assumed I was able to talk to him, talk to the owners, and ended up, there was a few of us that all changed positions the same day. So one of my sales guys became the general manager in New York. I became the general manager in Ohio. And so I went from a company of about 11 that I was managing, 11 or 12, to almost 50. And considerably larger operation. And I did that for 3 years. So in 2018, you want me to stop there, or do you want me to keep going?
I was just going to ask, what made you jump? Was it the challenge to go and open up Buffalo, or?
It seemed like a great opportunity. So Jacqui and I were back selling together. At that point, we're still kind of selling out of the same sphere. The market had changed a little bit. I didn't have as much on the investor side. We were doing a little bit of paid leads. We were just looking to, she could manage all of the business we had. And so we either had to go get more real estate business, or this opportunity was an additional salary, was another company car, and it was 100% paid health benefits, and it was really good benefits. And so it was just the timing of it. And it seemed like it was something that ultimately from a professional standpoint, from a just experience standpoint, it was it just seemed like an opportunity that I didn't want to pass up. And actually, my name came up in a board of directors meeting, and my dad, who was also on the board of directors, said, he won't be interested in that. And he jokingly mentioned it to me. And I started thinking, I'm like, well, how would this work? What would this look like? And I literally interviewed, and we sat and talked. And throughout the interview, they kept, the owners, who I've known at this point, I've known for, more than 15 years, because there was a gap in that time. And they kept stopping, going, are we still okay? We still good? We can continue talking. I'm like, yeah, let's keep going. And by the end of it, I ended up accepting the position.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. You know, the way that you guys were able to transition the business, right? Like an opportunity for you to step in when she was stepping out, and now, she was stepping back in, and now allowed you to step back out. So 2018, is that when you get back into real estate then?
It was, but when 2013, when I stepped out, as the business actually started to grow, she did bring on, at that point, grew a team with buyer's agents, showing agents. We got to the point where we also had a full-time admin on staff that we paid. And their businesses grew to the point where it made sense for them to kind of do their own thing. So when we came to eXp in 2017, their businesses were going like gangbusters. So that was a good opportunity for us to kind of dissolve the team, because they were having so much success. They were growing their own businesses. And that's when my wife, when Jacqui started her coaching business, was in that 2017. But in 2018, I was managing that company. It wasn't fulfilling me anymore. I was working for somebody else's, goals and dreams and budgets and all those kinds of things. And quite frankly, our group had grown to the size where, our passive income was replacing about 2/3 of my income. And so it just made sense for me to make the transition there. Plus, I was looking to get back into real estate. I wanted to be back involved in our business. I wanted to make sure that our Sphere clients were going to be taken care of. And then also, I just wanted to kind of, build something of my own.
Yeah. And when you came back, did you just kind of dive in? Was it back to like investors, or was it just kind of helping anyone and everyone? Was there any strategy or plan in place to kind of get you acclimated to real estate? Because the difference between 2013 and 2018 was probably a fairly large jump. So how did you focus? What did you focus on when you got back into the business?
Well, first of all, I gave my company 8 weeks notice. The position that I held was not something that you just go out and you just hire somebody. And I wanted to be respectful of them and give them notice and give them an opportunity. And I also even told them, if the timing doesn't quite work out, I'm happy to come back and help train the new manager. So I left on really great terms, and that was important. So as I was doing that, we started ramping up marketing to our Sphere. And that's where we leaned in heavy too. I also signed up for things like OpCity and some other sources of leads. Typically the ones that I was signing up for were the ones that you paid on the back end, not an upfront cost. But most importantly, I hired a coach. I hired somebody. I interviewed 3 or 4 different coaches, and hired one that I connected with the best. Not because we got along the best, but I thought would be the best fit for me. And I worked with Kevin Hoover for about 2 years. And I started in October or November of 2018. I took some time between the corporate job and jumping into real estate kind of full time. Part of it, was timing of the year. And part of it is I just needed to kind of like mentally like close that door, kind of re-energize myself, and then get going. But hiring the coach was really kind of important.
And I know now you focus a lot on veterans and you do a lot in that space. When did you make the decision to kind of go that direction? Because you have a nonprofit, and I want to dive into that as well. But when did you kind of make that decision of like, okay, I want to kind of lean into this market and help this, buyer and seller pool that's out there that needs our help.
Mm-hmm. It was actually with the help of Kevin, to be honest with you. Our discovery call, he was really good at asking questions of me, what I enjoy doing outside of real estate, trying to help me find and identify what direction I was going to go. And I'll be honest with you, when I first got into real estate, it was just because it was the opportunity. It was something for me to do. It was going to help pay the bills. Sure, I enjoyed helping people, but it just felt differently once I identified and came up with a way to actually make a difference and to give back. I didn't serve, so I'm not a veteran. I'm pretty clear about that in all of my messaging. That I didn't serve, but it's something that is important to me to give back, to say thank you, to bring honor and respect to veterans and first responders. And so with his help, over some time, I developed a program where I give back 20% of my commission at closing. I'm not part of Homes for Heroes or any of the other programs. I looked at them. They're great programs. They do a lot of good for a lot of people. I just didn't fit their box. And so I decided to create my own box. And so I give back, to those clients that are veterans and first responders. My clients that aren't, they help me support the veterans and first responders. And I also donate to local charities, places like the Freedom House and Miller House and Stowe Memorial First Responders Fund, and all of these things locally that help homeless vets and first responders and things, because I want every home that I sell to serve and support those that are serve and support our country.
No, I love it. Is there a website or somewhere where, and I don't know if people can just go and donate or not, but is there a website or a place where someone can go to?
Yeah, if they just go to Sold with Ryan, that's just a site that defines kind of those couple of programs. There is a donate link on there as well to some of the organizations that I give to. There's been plenty others. I've lost track. It's important to me, to make sure that when there's a need to be able to fulfill that. I mean, I've been of the mindset when I've got back into real estate in 2018. I haven't set income goals and I don't set transaction goals. I started setting giving goals, and I know that if I'm able to give, that the income will take care of itself. And so that's been important to me the last 4 years.
Yeah, and you said something, through your discovery call, with your coach, really getting clarity on what you enjoy doing and potentially the people that you want to serve. And I think a lot of agents struggle with that, is really figuring out, I always tell people, like, you got to be true to yourself, right? Like fake it till you make it. Yeah, that works, but not long term, right?
No.
Like maybe to get some momentum going and things like that. But for me to, go outside of who I truly am, it's not going to last long term. And I think a lot of agents struggle with, that direction, that clarity of, okay, how do I want to go about starting my business and then growing my business? I call them business pillars. So, picking 2 to 3 business pillars of really what to focus on, and then just lean in, go all in on it. Right.
Well,
So
and
it's
I think
awesome that
that's
you had
why
that.
I was just going to say, I think that's why, what's the statistics? 88% of agents 2 years after getting licensed are no longer in the business. I think it's because they haven't identified what's important to them first and foremost. Secondly, they don't realize that they're starting a business. I think sometimes they think that they're going to join a brokerage and everybody's just going to give them leads and the business will come. I mean, no, you're an entrepreneur. And so I think it's a combination of those things. But as an entrepreneur, you have to find out what your lane is and invest all in. I mean, you can get 5 people on a panel that have grown huge businesses, and every single one of them built it differently and are all successful. Jacqui always says, there's really only 2 things that drive people and that create success. They have to have a plan and they have to believe in themselves. You do those 2 things, and the rest will happen.
Yeah. And that's exactly what this, the Tell Me More podcast is about, right? There's so many different paths and
Mhm.
journeys and ways that you can build this business. And it's not just you got to go and crush listings, or you got to go and build a team, and you got to go and do X, Y. No, you don't need to do that. It's what works for you. Find what
Absolutely.
works for you, what you're passionate about. Because if you enjoy it and you're passionate about it, then you're going to show up in it every single day, and that's what it takes to find success in this business is the
Absolutely.
consistency. So,
Absolutely.
um, Ryan, I want to kind of fast forward a little bit
Okay.
into the future, where you kind of want to go with things, real estate, your business. What's something that you're looking to accomplish in the next 12 months?
Actually, it's personal, not business. But I think investing in yourself personally, I think equates to it just shows up in your business. So I've kind of leaned into Wim Hof, ice plunges, all kinds of different things. Becoming kind of the best version of yourself, because if you can become the best version of yourself, I think your relationships benefit, your business benefits. And I just actually signed up this morning for the first step in becoming an instructor. It's quite the process, but step one is going through the first 12-hour fundamentals class. So I'm going to take care of that, and then in the next 12 months, I'd like to be an instructor.
It's funny because I knew you were doing that, and you've been doing it for a while now, right?
Yeah, about 18 months.
18, yeah, and I start seeing more and more people, jumping into the ice baths on TikTok and stuff like that. I'm like, man, I should probably like look into this, but I'm not ready to make that commitment. That looks, looks a little painful. So,
It's a commitment, and it's not comfortable. But I
but
tell you what,
success,
though, mentally, I think it's a much tougher workout mentally than it is physically.
yeah,
I'm gonna
success
be
leaves
jumping in
clues.
after we're done here, by the way.
Success leaves clues, right? Like Tony
Yeah,
Robbins does it. All these other people do
100%.
it. So, it's just really making that commitment. No, that's awesome. That's great. Is there something that you're looking to accomplish in the next 5 years?
Probably stepping out of business. We continue to grow our group of agents. We've got well over 400 agents at this point. Jacqui primarily is the leader of them. I'm involved on some level, involved in some of the, we do a 10-week training for agents. I'm involved in that, involved in some of the local trainings that we do, becoming more of a mentor than somebody that's in the day-to-day. Probably always sell some business. I think it's important to kind of stay connected. Right now, I primarily work with Sphere clients, although, we've got great agents that we work with. I'm always giving opportunities to newer agents, helping them with connecting them with clients maybe they wouldn't have, and walking them through that process. I enjoy that. I think that's what I'm looking to do in the next 5 years.
Oh,
Possibly living in Puerto Rico. We've got a place down there we bought last year, and certainly wouldn't be there 12 months out of the year, but I wouldn't mind being there 6 months out of the year.
yeah, especially because you're a little bit further north, so you get a little bit more snow and it's a little bit more
Oh
colder.
yeah,
So,
oh yeah, and these old bones don't like the cold. Believe
yeah,
it or not.
exactly, exactly. No, that's awesome. I think that's everyone. I think a lot of agents don't think of the exit strategy. I did it when I was 22 years old when I got in.
Yeah,
Really just recently, I've really started thinking about, okay, what does this potentially look like? What does it need to look like? Um, Again, being true to who you are, and I don't want to nothing against agents that sell when they're 70, 75, 80 years old, but I don't want to do that.
no,
Really getting it, like you said, getting that plan in place. What does that look like? Because there is, I heard someone say this, I forget, a couple months ago or something. You don't see retirement parties for real estate agents. It's usually
no,
like they sell, and then fall off the face of the earth.
yeah. Well, and
So
my dad, he worked a corporate job till he was 68. He's now retired, but he still does consulting work and some other things. And part of it's because he does enjoy it. And I think
sure,
I think that's okay. But I don't want to have to work until I'm
Yeah.
70, 75. I want to enjoy life. Isn't about making more money. It's about what you can do with it.
Yeah.
Certainly giving it, but also enjoying. I'm not looking to buy a bunch of stuff. I'm looking to have experiences. And the older you get, the less experiences that you can thoroughly enjoy.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is important.
No, I love it. I'm right there with you. Ryan, what's a legacy goal for you? What's a goal that you want to hit when you're no longer here?
Whew. I would like to be at a point where we're giving $1 million. Not just because it's a big number, but because of what it can do and the lives that it can change. And the legacy would be all of the different people's lives that remember, not remembering me, but remembering that somebody cared enough to give to help them when they needed it the most.
Mm, I love it. I specifically don't put that question on there for a reason. So, but no, Ryan, I want to be respectful of your time, and I do have one final question that I always end with, and it's if you could give one piece of advice that you wish you had, when you got into the business, or maybe that piece of advice that you always tell an agent, about real estate or wanting to grow their business, what would that advice be?
I think it's try everything. I don't think you can find your lane, whether it's cold calling, FISBO's expireds, whether it's door knocking, whether it's, leaning into, to local Rotary and Kiwanis and other organizations, getting involved in your community. Try all of those things, and whatever connects with you, that's what you lean into 100%. I mean, until you do it, and don't send out one mailer to your community and farming doesn't work. Like you got to put some time into it. But I think it's try everything, and also learn from people that have already done it. I think that was the biggest thing I did, especially the first couple of years in business. I went to every training, every panel, every thing that was offered that I could find to learn and to learn new things. I connected with an agent that had done a bunch of creative financing because of the type of market that we were in. I learned lots about land contracts and all kinds of different things, because this market is going to adjust again. We're in one now. It's going to happen again. It's real estate. It's always going to happen, and being open to that. So trying everything that you can and learning everything that you can. And whatever doesn't fit, be okay with not doing that.
So awesome. Those that are watching, this video, Ryan's phone number is down below. His social media profiles are down below. We didn't even get into it, but TikTok, he's got a huge TikTok following. So if you want to connect with Ryan, if you're, in the greater, Akron, Canton, Kent, area, whether you're a real estate agent, whether you're a buyer, a seller, whoever, reach out to Ryan. Ryan, for those that are listening in, what's the best way for them to connect with you? Whether it's, like I said, real estate side, or buying and selling.
Probably through social media. I'm pretty easy to find. Realtor Ryan on TikTok. Yeah, I got about 61,000 followers. But my social profiles are all R Ryan Bowman, Realtor for the first R Ryan Bowman. I'm pretty easy to find. And I'm happy to chat with whoever'd like to.
I love it. Ryan, thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your journey. And if I could do anything for you, please, don't hesitate to reach out.
Absolutely. Appreciate being on. Enjoyed it.
All right. Talk to you soon.
All righty.